We have everything installed now. We got our valve cover installed. We have all of our timing components, our ported oil pump. Everything looks great. Now, I threw the oil pan back on, and at the time, I was just kind of like, whatever, it'll be fine. I don't need to baffle it or mess with it, but I think I do. And that comes after doing a bunch of research from guys who are running front-wheel drive setups where the motor is mounted, obviously, the opposite direction of this, and they have big issues in hard cornering. And now with this motor facing front to back, that's obviously going to be what would a hard cornering issue be like in a front wheel drive setup, if that makes any sense. So essentially the oil likes to slosh this way and this way going up into the timing chain area, and this way just going up into the this part of the motor. And that on our application causes a big problem because accelerating, our oil is going to go back and want to shoot right up into the timing chain area, and under hard braking, it's going to want to do the same thing, and braking actually does more G's than anything. So I think we would potentially run into a problem with this. So it's just better to do it now, and hopefully the baffling will work. If we have problems with the baffling, then we'll learn what those problems are and oil pressure issues on this motor and not our expensive motor. And, you know, kind of the whole thing reigns true. Like, I'm excited to get this motor back in. However, it's a smart thing to do just to do this all now instead of risking any kind of experimental baffling setup on our expensive motor. So just kind of trying to keep that in mind. I mean, there's no rush to, you know, to get this thing done on my end. It's just, I want to do it right, and I want it to be a really good, reliable setup. So we're gonna pop the pan off now and figure out an oil baffle. Sounds like a plan to me. So this is what I have so far. Now this baffle here is going to sit pretty much like that. And it will be at an angle because, you know, we just have to level it off with the bottom of the pan, which I'm using my little angle finder to do. So this here is the front of the motor. This is the rear of the car, actually. So this is transaxle, this is the timing area. So our big issue is preventing oil from sloshing up this way under heavy braking, and then prevent oil from sloshing up into the timing chain area up into here under hard acceleration. So that's going to be kind of the harder thing to deal with. So right now I pretty much have it set where we're gonna have a decent little baffle here that's gonna prevent us from the heavy braking shortage, but it's the rear that I'm a little bit worried about. I believe Track Tough makes a bolt-on baffle for the timing chain area, which I'm actually going to look at right now. It might just be cheaper to buy it, and then I think the baffle I have will be fine. I don't think we're going to need trapdoors or anything like that in this application, because really the side to side isn't really what I'm concerned about with a baffle like this. It's really the front and back. So all the track guys complain about losing oil pressure on really hard right or really hard left hand corners, mainly right hand corners, which would be what I think the timing chain area, right? So if you think about that, that's where they're having the biggest issues, and that's where this is going to be having the most G forces. So I think a baffle is really necessary on this, long story short, because, you know, they're running low oil pressures when the oil is going like this. Well, that's only when turning. I'm going to be doing this all the time. Back and forth is the most common movement, in my opinion. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. I just have a little more figuring to do to make sure this is a solid setup, and I'll get right back to you guys. All right, now check this out. I got a pretty solid cutout here of my baffle, and now what I'm going to do is just throw a little bit of a kick in the middle of it to create like a V shape on my press, and that will essentially channel the oil down and then back into the sump is my idea. Hey, check this out. This is revision 2.0 on the oil pan baffle. Getting a little frustrated with it, but it's all good. The first one I made wound up being pretty good, but I wanted a little more of a bend in it. and that meant when I bent it, the edges were too short to the sides of the oil pan. So now we're at the position where we got to kind of start over again. It's not a big deal. It took 3 minutes to cut it out in my saw. So now we're just going to go ahead and pop a hole for the pickup. We'll run our tube, and then we are going to test fit it on the bottom end. It's pretty tricky to do, actually, to get everything kind of figured out, because when you're putting the pan on, you're going in blind. So it's a little bit tricky to do this. So I'm doing the best I can, and yeah, I'm going to pop this hole, notch the tray here, and we'll see how it fits. All right, I've been working on this for probably about an hour or so, and we have our baffle pretty much fitted here. So the baffle fits, and my only thing now is I'm going to create a little trapdoor situation here, I think. Okay guys, I got my hinges for our little trapdoor, and these are just regular, just aluminum hinges, so they have the holes in them. So what I did is I just welded them up, as you can see here. So it's a nice flat deal. And what we're gonna be doing is mounting these somewhere about there. So these will operate as the trapdoors, and it will allow the oil to come in and not come out. Alright, check this out guys. It's a little bit funky because I just had to kind of space them out a little bit, but here are our trapdoors. So they're gonna work good. Now one thing to notice, I just bent the edges just a little bit. That way it's not just a flat surface, because the oil will want to stick to that. So just having the edges there makes it not want to stick. Now we're just going to cut out on this bottom baffle here, so these can actually function as trapdoors, and that's going to be that. And then I have one more surprise for you guys for this oil pan, and this is a done deal. Oh, there we go, guys. And it all fits nicely in here. Nice and free. And one thing that I did want to do is, just to ensure we have no problems, I oriented the pins in the hinge to go in a certain direction where they could never, I mean really either direction it wouldn't be possible, but if somehow these pins work themselves out, which they won't, they can't get free in there and cause us problems. They would contact the side of the pan before they could get fully out or anything like that. So that's that. And then the next thing we're going to do, this will be the final thing, is with our pan and our setup, we have a ton of room either side. We're really unlimited on how much room we have. So what I'm going to do is add a little capacity to the side. So I'm just going to bump out a couple wings here on either side and throw some trapdoors in it, just like we did. So each wing will be behind this front baffle here and underneath here, and that's really going to be it. And I'm just looking to add maybe a quart more capacity, nothing crazy. And I think a quart will be a good amount. And my idea is that if for some reason this baffle doesn't hold up enough and we have issues with it coming up the timing chain, this oil here will compensate for any of that. And really, at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to have more oil capacity in an oil pan. It keeps things cooler. It actually makes the oil last longer because you have more oil doing less work, essentially, if that makes any sense. And it's just really not a bad idea. So adding that extra capacity should really help us overall, and there's really no downside to it. So that's the last thing I'm gonna do here, and I'll show you how I'm gonna do that right now. It's very simple. I built actually S54 BMW oil pan conversions, and I do a similar thing on there. I add about 3/4 of a quart extra capacity on those, and it usually works out pretty darn slick at the end of the day. So that's what we're doing there, and that will be the end of the road for the oil pan. And once we're all buttoned up, we'll weld all this in. You know, just stitch weld it in a few spots just to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. And that's done, and we can reinstall it on the motor. All right, here we have one of our expansion tanks. It's gonna go something like that. I'm actually gonna bump this out probably another, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inches just to give it a little more capacity. For my eyeballs, this is about just a little over a 1/2 quart. And then the other side here, we got this one, which is gonna sit something like that. And this one looks about 3/4 of a quart, in my opinion. So I think a safe bet would be this would be about 1.5 quart extra capacity on this pan. So I'm happy with that. It's definitely worth the work to do it. Like I said, I have no restrictions underneath the car, so I can go as wide as I really want. I don't need to get too crazy with it, but it will be nice just to be able to add, you know, an extra quart or two of oil. Definitely can't hurt. And furthermore, I'm gonna be adding an oil cooler as well. So that oil cooler, the lines, the cooler and all that should probably hold another 1/2 quart to 3/4 of a quart as well. So I think we're gonna be going probably about 2, maybe 2.5 quarts over stock, if I was to guess, with doing all this. So that is a comfortable number for me, and we'll get to fabbing the little tanks here. All right, here's our aluminum versions. Not the most simple thing ever, but fits good. This is where cardboard comes in handy. A couple hours into these, let's say 2 hours total into these tanks, just so you guys know. You know, this stuff doesn't happen instantly, but you know, that's the way it is. All right, guys, this is where we're at. We got a little trapdoor here. We got trapdoors there, and we got a trapdoor there. And I also drilled a couple holes just because it's really not that necessary to keep oil trapped in there, I guess you would say, as much as possible, because the holes I drilled are relatively small. So it's just my thought process is, you know, I don't want to not have oil be able to come out when it needs to, essentially, and I want it to be able to equalize once it's in there. We just don't want it rushing around when it's, you know, hard cornering and things like that. But that's where we're at. So we have our trapdoor right here, and then I just drilled 2 small holes here, and this whoops, this is gonna be that side. On this side, it's a little larger of a setup. We have a trapdoor here, and I just have a free-flowing hole there. And then we're going to just add our little wide body on here, and that's that. So it's all prepped, ready to weld. I'm gonna get this all welded up. First things first, I'm just gonna tack this pan in, test fit it one more time on the motor, just to triple check that any of, you know, these areas here that we modified, the pan still fits. All right, we got the final test fit on here. I just want to see if I can show you guys a little sneak peek in here. So that's what we got going on. Like I said, this is the K24Z3 oil pan, and we're approximately, oh, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch to the bottom of the actual pan on the sump. But we got a little trapdoors. And now we just gotta toss the wide body kit on here. Give us a little more capacity. and hopefully prevent any issues with oil starvation. That's my biggest concern. I'm kind of shooting off the hip here. I think this will work, but we're just gonna check our oil pressure numbers while we're ripping this thing when the time comes. And if we ever have to make adjustments or, you know, suck it up and just buy a baffle kit, which may be something we have to do, we'll do that. But I think this will be a good alternative. Cross my fingers and hope what I did here is going to work. So I'm just gonna weld it all up now, and that's gonna be the end of that. Here it is all tacked in place. Just making sure everything clears everything here, and we're ready to roll. Well, here it is, all welded up and ready to rock and roll. So pretty pumped about it. Everything came out good. The welds were on the cast here, a little bit dirty in spots. But you'll get that with this aluminum here on these cast oil pans and things like that. Nothing much you can do about it. But yeah, we have our baffle in and everything's mint. So now we're going to just take this pan and fill it with water, rinse it out, make sure there's no metal shavings or stuff in there. And furthermore, we're gonna leave water in it and see if it gets, you know, seeps out anywhere. You know, it's always a possibility you have a little pinhole in here. I really don't have a good way of pressure testing this pan right now, so that's going to be our next easiest step, is just fill it with water and make sure there's no areas that start seeping out water. So that's going to do it for this one. The next step is to get this motor back in the car, which I'm really excited about because that's going to be the last time it's going to go in the car before it fires up. So super pumped about that. I know I'm behind the 8 ball a little bit on posting videos, but I got crushed with work orders the past couple weeks. So I've been, this is my first time I've actually been able to get back at this car a little bit here. So that's what we got. Fired up to get this thing going, and I really appreciate you guys watching. Tune into the next one to see the motor go back in the car and finish all of our plumbing and things like that and get the sucker fired up. So appreciate it. Take it easy, guys.